life can be quite tough, very complex. But also life gives us great opportunities and something fun, something exciting, and sometimes it's very challenging too. But regardless what happens, at least we will be able to create something that's meaningful and then continue to move forward and continue to enjoy the life that we have.
My guest today is Chie Sawa, founder of Thrive Life Design, a non-clinical sanctuary for leaders in Japan to pause, reflect, and gain clarity. Chie has spent 20 plus years in deep, meaningful conversations, first as a psychotherapist, and always as a quiet observer of human connection and transformation. Over time, she's learned that not everyone needs fixing. Some people need a sanctuary. Thrive Life Design offers private sessions for English-speaking leaders in Japan to pause, breathe, and return to themselves. I think I need that, Chie. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Nick. It's so nice to be talking to you again.
Likewise. We had a chat last month and it was good to get to know you. And you shared with me that you spent a number of years in America. So would you like to talk about your background?
Sure. I was born and raised in Chiba, Japan, in a Japanese-speaking household, and I went through all public schools there. And since I was little, I had a strong curiosity about American culture and eventually led me to study English more seriously. In high school, I had a chance to spend about 3 weeks in New York State, and that made me want to stay there longer. So I ended up living in the US for a total of 11 years and a half across 4 different states, including Utah for 2 years, Michigan for 2 years, Indiana for 2.5, and Massachusetts for about 5 years. And I attended 3 different universities. I actually transferred after my sophomore year in college and eventually built my career as a psychotherapist. And I had such a great time living in the US. And that part of me still deeply, impact me for even today.
Amazing. It does impact you, doesn't it, when you live in a different country? But for you to also become a licensed mental health counselor there and do all that study in a non-native language is very impressive. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so after returning to Japan in 2010, you experienced reverse culture shock and sometimes felt out of place, even in your own country of Japan. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. When I lived in the US, I adjusted pretty well and I did not get any homesick. But coming back to Japan at the end of 2010 was a total different story. I experienced a lot of reverse culture shock and I almost felt out of place, even though I was born and grew up in Chiba. And I also felt homesick for my life in the US. And moving to Tokyo for the first time made that experience even more intense because everyday things like paperwork, banking, transportation, writing and reading in kanji, and formal Japanese took more energy than expected. Like how to exchange your business cards and how to dress, how to show up, the differences between keigo, kenjogo, sonkeigo, and all of that. You know what I'm talking about. So I asked myself this question. Did I actually grow up here? Did I actually finish all the school here in Japan? And I still feel this way. I guess this is me. And yeah, eventually I adapted to the changes and rediscovered the beauty of Japan. And this culture, people, and connections I built. And I'm very deeply grateful about American culture and Japanese cultures. And also, since I work with a lot of international people here in Japan, I get to experience and learn about different cultures, different people, histories, their customs. So I'm very grateful of living here, and I love Japan this time. Like I would say, I love Japan. I'm so grateful to be here.
I love Japan too. And
Mhm,
that's obviously one of the reasons why I'm thinking of going back. But like you, I experienced reverse culture shock when I returned to Australia. I felt out of place. I noticed I was bowing a lot when I was meeting people or doing some form of business. So I had to break that habit. And it was a little unsettling because here everything was either laid back or also direct, like more direct.
mhm,
And I'd been in this environment in Japan where things were slower or softer, people
mhm,
weren't direct, and people were
mhm,
far more focused in Japan. And coming back to Australia, yeah, even just going to supermarkets, it seemed like, gee, people don't do their job with full intention here. I had
mhm,
forgotten. I also came back as a father. So that was interesting. My son was born in Japan.
mhm,
So maybe there was some pressure with that too. But then you adjust, things get back to normal. So I appreciate both cultures too. And you learn so much from learning the language, experiencing the
mhm,
culture. It's
mhm.
like we have the best of both worlds.
Right, right, right. Each culture has wonderful points and not so good points, but you get to embrace all of that.
You're right. I'm also thinking, wow, I will miss Australia. I'm aware of that too.
Mhm,
And there is that challenge of moving,
mhm.
adjusting. And you've just reminded me, oh, that's right. Things are a lot more complicated in Japan.
Right.
So I'll have to embrace that and think, okay, this is part of moving back.
Mm, mm, mm,
So I think you
mm.
need a very strong or positive mindset. And on that theme, you are a certified public psychologist, certified clinical psychologist, a licensed mental health counselor. What attracted you to psychology and counseling?
If I'm being honest, psychology and counseling were not my original goals. What I really wanted at first was to become fluent in English and build a life and career in an international environment. So I majored sociology and women's studies in undergraduate because I was drawn to learning about how society shapes people's lives. And also I was interested in women's and children's rights. But over time, I became more interested in human behavior, especially social psychology and the connection between inner experience and how the world around us, like how group impacts us and our psychology, and the impact of us individual psychology impacting a bigger systems. So I was also interested in working with people directly. That is what gradually led me into counseling in grad school and eventually into the professional path that I took.
Amazing. So it seemed like you achieved your goal of becoming fluent in English and building a life and career in an international environment.
Yeah.
And then I guess you were ready to grow into this area of psychology and studying what you've just shared with us, women and children's rights. So that's an
Mhm.
interesting area. Why did you want to study women and children's rights?
Good question. Well, in Japan, we often say, girls cannot do this, or, girls are this and girls are that, boys are this and that. And luckily, the way I grew up, my parents never opposed anything. Or maybe they said something, or maybe I didn't listen to them, or I just picked and I became selective listener. But they are very encouraging. And the message that I got was, I can do anything that I want in my life. And that's how I still believe that. But as I go on as I continue with my path, I start learning about what other people are saying. My peers are saying, I cannot do this because I'm a girl, or girls or women cannot go up the ladder of career. And that made me question or wonder why, we are so capable and why not? So that's why I became interested in, and as I was going through a list of majors in the US, I learned that women's study was one of the major or some subjects that people are teaching. So I was like, okay, this is for me. And I also wanted to study sociology. So sociology and women's studies, really good combinations. At least to me, it was nice. I had a good time learning about those things.
Hey, it's Nick here, and I just wanted to touch base and tell you about my new book, A Year of Ikigai, a collection of short and simple daily reads over 365 days for easy understanding and integration of the Japanese concept of Ikigai. You can now pre-order this book through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree. Women are rock stars. When I think of Ikigai, I like to refer to the work of Miko Kamiya and the impact she's had on Ikigai. She was a research pioneer. I like to call her the mother of Ikigai. She's greatly impacted my work and my life. Many of my best students are women, and I've interviewed them. So yeah, definitely more than capable. Women have been really inspiring in my life. I grew up with a single mother, so I can relate to what you're saying. Well, let's talk on your work. After over 20 years of clinical work, guided by a passion for psychology and the privilege of witnessing human transformation, and after co-founding and running a group private practice, you wanted to create something new beyond your typical psychotherapy practice. And this led you to founding Thrive Life Design, a business to help leaders. So please tell me about Thrive Life Design, Chie.
Yes. It came from a question I started asking myself after many years of doing this work. Like, what do I want to create next beyond psychotherapy? And I've taken my role as a therapist very seriously. And I also started like coaches, like therapists or any other professionals. I work very hard to stay up to date, keep learning, keep reflecting, sharpen my skills, keep up with changes in the world and in policy. But I also began to feel that my own worldview has become narrower than I wanted. And I want to see what else was out there. That's why I made this. I created Thrive Life Design. And I chose this name because I believe we all have the capacity to design a thriving life that's intentional, alive, and deeply our own. So that's why I chose my name. I not chose my name. I chose this name.
I love the word thrive. And I do see this theme of growth. You've challenged yourself. You've learned English. You went to the States to study. You've helped people through, obviously, counseling. You've co-founded a business and now built your own. I don't know if this is the right word, but Ikigai. So to make or to create, the value in doing that seems to be a theme I see in you. I see it in myself. I've always had this desire to learn, to try things. It resulted obviously in me building Ikigai Tribe. So would you say you've had this desire to create?
I definitely think so. I'm quite visionary. I didn't think I was, but if I continue with my path, tend to, for example, if I'm doing something for sometimes I master those things, but eventually, maybe I can use this, I can do that. Isn't that great? Or can I make it better? It's not because this is not enough that I need to change, but I'm more thinking about what if this changes? Isn't that exciting to create something new? Or is that better? Is it going to be helpful for my clients, for people, for the community? And I tend to think like that. So my imaginations tends to go a bit, how can I say, go wider. And execution can be a challenge, especially for me, but ideas, I get to be creative.
Well, I think this is very relatable to thriving,
Mm-hmm.
living, thriving, growing, challenging yourself, widening your vision on life and the world. So let's discuss these words that are important to your business, thrive and sanctuary. And so, how would you define thrive in English?
So it means flourishing and like a seed becoming a tree, growing steadily and spreading outward and eventually becoming part of something larger. And it carries the image of life expanding, deepening, and continue to grow, like you just described a bit earlier. And you caught my intention. That's exactly what I'm creating, the life design. And in that sense, it may be similar to a ripple effect or butterfly effect. But I'm actually especially interested in how each individual life continues to grow and thrive and how that then creates something bigger with other individuals that are also thriving on their own term.
Love it. Let's talk about sanctuary.
Yeah. When I use the word sanctuary, I mean a space where a person can pause, breathe, and come back to themselves and reconnect with their strengths. It can be a physical space or we can create through conversation, but the feeling is the same. Peace, clarity, and renewal. So I created this space for internationally minded leaders in Japan because their impact reaches far beyond themselves. They shape not only their own lives, but also the lives of their loved ones and the people around them, the teams they lead, the communities they serve, and the next generation. And those things, they're important part of their life and in return affect them both personally and professionally. And I also want to make it clear that my work through Thrive Life Design is not therapy. And unlike therapy, which can take many different forms depending on the modality, theory, or settings, so space is not centered on specific presenting concerns, symptoms, or mental health issues. So I draw the line here.
Nice. I'd like to quote your website. Explicitly for you, the quiet, introspective, creative, self-led leader or visionary, you're capable, you're good at what you do, and you want a mirror to reflect so you can show up as your authentic self. Authenticity, I think, really matters, especially if you want to lead others. I don't think you can wear a mask when you lead. You have to be yourself. I also think leaders suffer from the curse of ambition. We want to change the world or create positive change in our society.
Mm-hmm.
One idea is not enough. Sometimes one business is not enough. So I think there is this need for a sanctuary for leaders to stop and pause and question their decisions, their ambitions, because often leaders do sacrifice family, personal pursuits, friendships, because they're so focused on change, wanting to change. It's interesting you say they need or they want a mirror, but they don't find the time to look at it and reflect, and hence your business.
Mm-hmm. They may not have time or they may not think it's necessary to have, or it can be helpful for them to maximize their ambition or power that they already have. So I'm creating this space as a like 90 minutes or it can be a little shorter because You don't necessarily need hours of self-reflection. You don't need a mirror forever because you may need just a little bit of pause to reflect because you can see, you may be able to slow down enough to see what's coming, what's happening, and they can move forward.
Let's touch on reflection.
Mhm.
And when I think of reflection, many Japanese words come to mind. I know there's hansei. I know there's another word called naisei. So naisei comes to mind when it's personal reflection. So are reflection and Japanese naisei, are they the same?
They can overlap. And when I explain my work in Japanese, I use the term naisei because it gives people a familiar starting point. But for me, reflection is a little broader than that. It includes looking inward, like naisei, reflecting, but also awareness, presence, and the insight that can emerge through speaking or being heard with somebody else. So that will create a bit of like if you continue to reflect on yourself, what you see is through your lens. But if you
Mm-hmm.
do that with somebody else, it may be able to give you opportunity to reflect differently. And I love the moment when a person is talking and suddenly says, did I just say this out loud? Or like, as I talk to you more, I'm realizing this and that. It's almost like a light bulb goes on in their mind. And I can see that moment, not only in their words, but also in their posture, facial expression, and the voice. So I really like that moment because that can lead to saisei, meaning like coming to life again. So remembering who they are and what they have and take a step forward. And reflection is not always about analyzing, fixing, or planning what to do next. It is also about slowing down enough to notice what's already here and allowing meaning to unfold naturally.
Yeah, I love this. I relate this to perhaps what I call Ikigai coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you need reflection or some form of introspection, and journaling is very helpful to do that. But also when you have a conversation, a very intentional, focused conversation, and you're guided to some degree, it is a type of reflection. You're verbalizing it. And as you said, sometimes you have these moments of, I just said what I've been trying to say for the first time in months or years, or I've had this intuition and now I've articulated it. It has some form or structure. I also believe co-reflections are very helpful, and we can share perspective or lived experience that can create comfort or different perspective. And conversing is connection. It's a type of intimacy. And I think we need it more in this world where, we're having these short exchanges with our phones. We're not
Right.
talking. We're not listening enough. And often the problem is we're talking to someone and they're not listening or we're not listening. We're away in our thoughts, worried about work or another problem. So creating space to reflect and to talk, I think is very, very valuable. So perhaps we should talk on why is reflection or naisei important?
Because it creates space. And like I just mentioned earlier, it helps us slow down enough to notice where we are, how we are really feeling, how far we have come, and what may need our attention. So oftentimes we often go through scarcity. We are not enough. This is not enough. We should improve more. We should move forward. But if you stop a bit and reflect, it will give you an opportunity to think like, I am enough, or maybe we are already doing okay enough. But when life moves fast and we carry a lot of pressure, roles, and responsibilities, it is super easy to stay on autopilot. So reflection can interrupt that It creates a moment of awareness, and awareness gives us more choice. And also that leads to more ideas. But I don't believe reflection is the only tool. Sometimes, or many times, what we may need is rest, a bit of movement, or change the environment, action, or any other kind of support. It could be coaching, it could be therapy, or it could be something else. What's important is to have different tools and use what works in that moment for us. So one thing may work for somebody. Well, just because it works for you, it doesn't mean it works for everyone. And it just because it doesn't work for you at that moment, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work at all. Or one thing works at a particular moment, but if the situation changes, the time is different, it might not work. So my belief is that it's very nice for us to have different ways of reflections or tools or things that work for you. And if you know those skills or tools, you'll be able to pick and choose what works at that moment for you. So that's why reflection is great, but it's not the only tool.
Yeah, I like this idea. It's almost like we have a self-care toolbox,
Mm-hmm.
and based on our intuition or gut feeling, we can decide. And I have this belief that for most people, if you spend too much time alone, you become delusional and you have these false beliefs about you, about others, and positivity starts to shift to, you being negative. And I know this happens to me. And then that can lead to you interpreting life's events in this negative mindset. And then you have the negativity towards life, which I think can lead to rumination and then resentment, all based on these delusions. I call them silent plagues of the mind. Yeah, this so-and-so did this to me, or I'm still angry about something that happened months ago. So they keep people trapped in the past, preventing them from moving forward. So I have a question. Is reflection the solution or part of the solution when we have this delusional mindset and we end up ruminating or resenting people or life?
I'm glad you asked this question. I think this is very important. So thank you so much for asking
My pleasure.
this. Though I will not present reflection as a solution to rumination or resentment, or promise that it will definitely make someone feel better or solve the problems. Those experiences can be very complex. And when somebody feels stuck in repetitive thoughts or emotional pain, reflection alone may not be enough and will not be enough. So if someone is struggling in a way that's significantly affecting their well-being, relationships, work, home, or daily functioning, then appropriate professional mental health support will be the better path. So that's one reason that I'm clear that my work through Thrive Life Design is not therapy, and I still take that boundary seriously, because reflection itself is helpful, but there's always different lines, like how much this is impacting you, how much this is showing up. Then I would just encourage. There's always a different way of helping, and different toolkits are there. There are many different professionals they'll be happy to help those people.
So let's talk about these services you offer. And who knows, eventually one day I might come to you and go into your reflection room and have a conversation with you. So you offer two forms of deep reflection. Would you like to talk about them?
Sure. One is the reflection room, a one-on-one conversation space where people can look more closely at what's happening in their life, what they are carrying, and what may be emerging next. And it's flexible, personal, and shaped around the individual. Basically, you decide when, what you want to talk about, and the results you would like to get. Person and I work together as a team. The other is tarot, which I use as a reflective tool rather than as fortune telling. The method that I use is called Jinsei Monogatari Tarot, Soul Story Tarot, and it's created by Yumiko Sakano, a Japanese certified clinical psychologist. So in this 90-minute session, I would say 90 minutes, but usually it takes a little over 90 minutes because we work with 46 cards across 23 categories to explore your situation from multiple angles. So it's quite structured, unlike the reflection room. So we'll look at your current themes, the core challenge, what might be ready to be released, your next clear step, your communication styles or your strengths. And it helps you see the patterns, inner tensions, and choices and possibilities. And also offer the combination of these two, tarot and reflection room. That's my service.
I must admit, initially I thought tarot cards, that's unusual. Like, is it woo-woo? But it seems like they're prompts, very helpful prompts to discuss aspects of your life. And then it guides the conversation to go to areas maybe you haven't thought about, or maybe be helpful in bringing up concerns or issues you have and you're just not ready to articulate them.
Right.
So that's interesting. My wife used to love tarot cards. So you'll have to meet my wife.
Love to.
Have a conversation inspired by tarot cards.
Yes.
So on these two types of reflection, is the intention for your reflection room to create yutori?
Yes, exactly. Yutori can be both objective and subjective, and it is something external like time, space, fewer demands or fewer to-do lists, but it can also be internal, like a felt sense of room within yourself. So in that sense, I see both the reflection room and tarot as a kind of subjective yutori. And for yutori, again, we cannot see yutori. And depending on what you consider yutori might be different from another person consider yutori as. But this would create a space. And what I'm hoping is to create an opportunity for people to loosen their tight shoulders, let their creativity come back, regain energy and strength so that they can return to the world more fully themselves.
It is interesting that we often pay to get help and it involves dialogue, either therapy or coaching. How can we better our lives? So there's definitely this human need to be listened to be heard, to be understood, and then maybe guided. Sometimes we just want to be listened to and be heard and understood. And then other times we want that, but we also need some guidance, like some possibility and hope. So we should discuss what's the next step after reflection.
There are two ways to answer to that question. On one level, the next step after reflection depends on the person. It may lead to a clear decision, a meaningful conversation, or simply a more honest awareness of what's true or what's important for them. And not every step can be dramatic or aha moment. And for some people, the next step is also continued reflection. They may return for occasional check-ins and use that space as a kind of strategic reflection space, like monthly, every other month, or as needed. For some people, ongoing reflection itself may become a next step. But on another level, for my business, the next step is continued evolution. I'm creating meaningful opportunities that bring creativity, and thoughtful human connection. And as I mentioned to you, I'm discovering the beauty of Japan. There are so many things that I don't know about this culture, so many things that I like to learn and enjoy. So I'll be creating something to embrace life here and the culture, different cultures with other people who share similar values, interests, and vibes. So that's my next step.
Maybe that's your Ikigai, rediscovering Japan. Yeah? Would you say it's part
Yes,
of your Ikigai? Yeah?
definitely. Yes, I definitely took Japanese culture for granted. And I was so focused on American culture and English. And so maybe I think many people experience the same thing. Once you are outside of that country and once you come back, you rediscover,
Mm.
wow, this is wonderful.
I hear that a lot from my
Mhm,
Japanese friends who've lived overseas.
mhm.
And often when they're overseas, they get many questions about Japan. And then they begin to realize, oh, Japan is unique. It is fascinating. It has this incredible history. It has all these cultural practices. And then you come back and yeah, you're rediscovering this amazing culture and history and people. It's certainly my ikigai to learn more about Japan. So I might join you on that journey of rediscovering and learning.
Yeah, we can thrive together.
Sounds good. Best way to do it is with others, sharing the journey.
Mhm.
So if someone's listening to this and they're in Japan and they're leading or they just need time to reflect, how can people reach out to you, Chair?
Yes, I actually have two websites. So one is a Thrive Life Design website. And will you be sharing this website link later on?
Yes, we will share your website links in the show notes.
Great, thank you. The first one, it's a block website. The call is block. And it talks about the reflection room and tarot that I mentioned to you during this podcast. I actually have another website. It's a same URL, but /JA, and it's yellow page. That's for Japanese readers. I put English version too, but for Japanese readers or bilingual readers who are interested in tarot. But the yellow website, it has just a one tarot session only, not reflection or combination of the reflection room or tarot. And I'm also quite active on LinkedIn. So if people want to connect me through LinkedIn, I'd be happy to get in touch. And I'm currently offering introductory rate through
Mhm.
April 30th. So if people contact me and request services and also complete the payment by then, you can get the introductory rate. And then you also have until the end of May 31st to receive a session. But after that, everything will be going back to a different rate. So if people are interested in, please contact me.
Sounds good. So just to confirm, that's thrivelifedesign.com. And then the Japanese is the same domain, just with thrivelifedesign.com/JA/ obviously for the Japanese language. I would take up the offer if you're in Japan and you're listening to this and it's still April. Book a session with Chair, do some reflecting. Who knows? It might help you process some concerns. It might give you some direction, might even change your life. It's been a joy speaking to you today, Chair. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your life and the work that you do. And we should catch up when I'm in
Sure.
Tokyo.
Please. Love to meet you in person.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
This episode of the Ikigai Podcast was brought to you by my new book, A Year of Ikigai, which you can now pre-order from Amazon and Barnes & Noble.